Tonight on the MTN News, the cost of a hoax.
It's one of the parts of the job, and that's the unfortunate reality of today's climate.
Numbers show yesterday's swatting attempt cost Billings hundreds of thousands of dollars. But how much more damage was done psychologically? Plus, a date which lives in infamy.
Pearl Harbor just is not a single battle in American military history. It is a seminal event in the history of the world.
Remembering the attack on Pearl Harbor and the Montanans who lost their lives in it 83 years ago tomorrow. And a landmark lost.
Yeah, it's sad to admit that it is the right decision.
Hear why so many in Stillwater County are mourning the decision to tear down this more than 100-year-old piece of history. The MTN News starts right now.
From Montana's news leader, this is the MTN 530 News.
Good evening and thanks for joining us on this Friday. I'm Russ Riesinger. The threats may be fake, but the effects are very real. Billings schools among a group across the western United States yesterday to face the latest swatting attempt, a digital hoax threatening school violence. One expert in the field says these stunts cost millions of dollars. But as our Isabel Sparts found out, the damage dives much deeper.
Billings West High was just one of many schools across the state to receive swatting threats Thursday morning, causing the school to go into lockdown. And while the threats weren't credible, it still takes a massive toll, both on resources and mental health.
Yesterday started out as a situation that could have been very real.
For West High English teacher Lance Edward, Thursday's swatting effort is just the latest in a seemingly never-ending stream of school threats.
This is one of the difficulties of teaching in this kind of climate. It is a taxing thing on all of the educators.
On Thursday morning, the school received a call indicating there was an active shooter outside of West High, prompting an immediate lockdown.
We had a high number of officers that came in just to sweep the school.
Not long after, Skyview received a similar call, and elementary schools were placed on secure. While the threat was ultimately a hoax,
this was the most significant one that has happened this year.
Threats like these take a huge toll.
From an education perspective, it interrupts your classroom. It interrupts the thoughts and minds of your students and your fellow teachers, and it is something that is incredibly disruptive.
TDR Technology Solutions is a New York-based company that tracks how much money school swatting threats cost taxpayers and school districts. The lockdowns at Billings West and Skyview High Schools only lasted a few hours, but TDR Technology Solutions estimates the final cost to the entire district was significant, more than $378,000. That includes more than $34,000 in lost instructional time, and more than $174,000 caused by student absentees, and more than $168,000 in mental health costs.
We track lost instructional hours, so in addition to the cost that we're looking at here, all of the cost of the first responders like the police department, things of that nature are in addition to this cost.
Statewide, Beeler says the costs of yesterday's swatting threats adds up to more than $822,000, impacting schools in Billings, Kalispell, Butte, Helena, Great Falls, and Bozeman.
In one day, it went up just under $1 million in the cost of Montana taxpayers.
In 2023, Montana saw 139 swatting threats, impacting 79,000 students and costing the state $4.3 million.
Taxpayers are paying for the instruction, but then the students aren't receiving the instruction.
It's hard to put a number on that, but I think it's safe to say that it takes a toll on students, it takes a toll on staff.
Billings school staff say that the incident was handled as quickly and as efficiently as possible, but know it's likely only a matter of time before it happens again.
It's one of the parts of the job, and that's the unfortunate reality of today's climate.
In Billings, Isabel Sparts, MTN News.
The threat was very real in Northern California yesterday. 2 kindergartners are recovering from gunshot injuries after a mentally disturbed man with a lengthy criminal background opened fire at their Christian school. Elias Wolford was shot in the lung and stomach, and Roman Mendez was struck twice in the chest. Surveillance video moments before the attack shows the gunman, 56-year-old Glenn Litton, with his hand inside his jacket near the waistband. Police say he faked interest in enrolling a grandchild in the Adventist school in order to gain access to the grounds. The community is rallying around the young boys.
It's tragic because everybody knows everybody. We're just very close in this entire community, and when something strikes, we come together.
A vigil is planned for this evening. Temperatures well above normal today, but changes are on the way for at least part of the weekend. Let's head over to Jason Stiff for our first look at the weather.
Well, after a day of a lot of sunshine for much of central and eastern Montana, as well as northern Wyoming, still a fairly clear sky over northern Wyoming. We do have increasing clouds as a storm from the Gulf of Alaska starts to move toward the Intermountain West. But it's not here yet, and the temperatures are certainly warmer than they should be for the first week of December. Look at this. This morning's low of 34 was almost as relatively mild as the high is supposed to be this time of year at 38 degrees. And this afternoon, how about 55 degrees, 17 degrees warmer than average. We're still lagging behind as far as precipitation is concerned. We would love to have more snow and rain. I'll tell you about the chances for that, warmth and wind coming up.
Tomorrow, December 7th, marks the 83rd anniversary of the attack on Pearl Harbor, a day to remember the lives lost and the struggle that followed as the United States entered and eventually helped turn the tide in World War II. Tonight, I talked to one former combat veteran who has authored several books on military history about the significance of that day and why he says it is one we should all pause to remember.
December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy.
Pearl Harbor just is not a single battle in American military history. It is a seminal event in the history of the world. It's in the history of mankind.
A day that retired Colonel Ed Saunders says should never be forgotten. The Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor claimed the lives of more than 2,400 Americans and thrust the U.S. into World War II, the deadliest war in history.
America has always been very reluctant, up until that time, reluctant to get involved in squabbles. We said those are just European squabbles, those are Asian squabbles. We needn't get involved in that. But we had no choice.
Saunders has been researching the Montanans who lost their lives in the attack.
And I found 14 names that were killed in action or missing in action at Pearl Harbor, one of whom was from Billings, by the way.
It was an attack that caught America by surprise.
America violated two fundamental precepts of the military. One, never be surprised, and two, never underestimate your adversary.
Oh, it was a great surprise. Surprised the hell out of me.
In 2018, I interviewed Hal Conrad, who was one of Montana's last remaining Pearl Harbor survivors at the time and has since passed away. He told me that he first thought the silver planes he spotted were U.S. Navy planes training, but that wasn't the case.
I watched the first plane drop his bomb, and I thought it was a dummy until it disappeared behind the trees along the fence line between me and Pearl. And black smoke started rolling up and concussion started rumbling through. And I knew it wasn't a dummy.
Fewer than 24 Pearl Harbor survivors are still living. Saunders says it's important to pause and remember the sacrifices that were made that fateful day and what would follow as the U.S. helped turn the tide in the war.
And because it changed us as a people, and we lost so many men, that is why we should always remember this and never forget what they did and never forget their memory.
And if you want to honor those lost in the attack on Pearl Harbor, be at the Yellowstone National Cemetery in Laurel tomorrow at noon. The ceremony will honor all World War II veterans laid to rest. There will also be a book available that will include all the names of those who are buried there. Again, the ceremony will commence at noon. Still to come on the MTN 530 News here on Q2, this 19th century Columbus home will be torn down in coming days after unsuccessful attempts to save it. Now many are showing up to say their final goodbyes. And later, a playoff preview. We look at tomorrow's big games for both the Cats and the Grizz.